Hey, what's up guys? Mikey here. It must be hard going through an identity crisis, not having an idea of who you really are, or even as much as a defining character trait. I sympathize with anybody who's going through something like that. But I have a new character trait that defines me now. I waited outside my local Best Buy for the midnight launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, and I was actually able to get one. This is the first time I got a video game console on launch day, and I have something more to define me than just being the biggest SpongeBob fan. Missing Identity is the episode where SpongeBob loses his name tag and has to find it before a Krusty Krab uniform inspection. This episode aired on January 19, 2004, and is also known as
Hi, SpongeBob! The SpongeBob! Who's SpongeBob? I said SpongeBob!
Yeah, that's pretty much it. This is one of the lesser talked episodes of the series, especially from season 3. Even compared to some of the worst episodes this season, you don't see many people talk about this one. I've definitely gone through a phase where this is the only episode I watched and talked about with my best friend, but the only time I remember doing that was around 7th grade. This isn't a bad episode, it's just kind of forgettable. According to the original pitch Bible for the series by SpongeBob's creator Steven Hillenburg, this was originally one of the ideas for the pilot of the show. SpongeBob loses his name tag, the most cherished part of his Krusty Krab uniform. I thought that was his hat. He and Patrick can't find the name tag, despite Patrick remembering he's seen it before. SpongeBob goes to work without the name tag, and he feels naked without it. The customer calls him "What's his name?" and SpongeBob runs home, ready to pack and leave town. But then Patrick sees that SpongeBob was wearing his shirt backwards, and he had his name tag on the whole time. This idea for the pilot didn't go through, and it was reworked to be in late season 3. That's pretty interesting to know that this was one of the ideas for the series pilot, and it's nice that it still ended up becoming a normal episode later down the line. And now that we know that information, let's watch this episode and see why people barely remember it at all. So the episode starts up and it's a rainy night at the diner. A customer lost his pen, so the waitress lets him borrow hers. SpongeBob states how he lost his identity once and starts to tell the story of how that happens. And this is the tale he told them. One morning, SpongeBob woke up, blinded himself with his blanket, and fell down the stairs, all while looking for Gary. After that, he fed Gary some snail po and caused a disturbance that the people at Snail Po World Headquarters didn't need to worry about. Then SpongeBob realized he was late for work and got dressed. Then he and Patrick greeted each other, and then in the present day, everybody else in the diner asked why the story was taking so long. I get asked that every day. SpongeBob skips ahead to the Krusty Krab. After he serves a customer, she points out that he wasn't wearing a name tag. SpongeBob realizes this and starts to have an anxiety attack. He tells Squidward how he lost his name tag and it's the worst thing that ever happened to him. Sounds like he's had a wonderful life. SpongeBob has a stress vision of somebody robbing a bank with his name tag and faints. When he recovers, Squidward reminds him of what happened. Then Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob and Squidward about a surprise uniform inspection in 1 hour. Well, it's not a surprise if he gave them a heads up about it. And whoever doesn't pass has to wear a stinky boot all day. Squidward tells SpongeBob to just retrace his steps to find his name tag. SpongeBob loves that idea and leaves to find his name tag. SpongeBob spoke to Patrick and told him to help retrace his steps by having him say hi to him on his way to work. Patrick agreed and SpongeBob starts his plan. He starts by waking up and getting the foghorn stuck on his head, getting blasted to the window, and feeding Gary. SpongeBob walks outside, but absent-minded Patrick forgets to say hi to SpongeBob as he passes. SpongeBob got mad and goes back inside to start the process again. He walks outside again, and Patrick forgets to say hi to him again. SpongeBob puts himself through the process another 3 times, and Patrick has a couple bloopers left in the final episode that SpongeBob didn't laugh at. SpongeBob starts to give up hope before Patrick reminds him to think of what else he did after he said hi. SpongeBob remembers everything else he did, including getting thrown in the dumpster. SpongeBob and Patrick decide to go look in there, even though it reeked with the stench of discovery. Oh! And this is the stench of adventure. SpongeBob and Patrick start looking, but SpongeBob gets covered in garbage and a Stingray 5000 single. SpongeBob reminds Patrick they have 1 minute until inspection and starts to freak out. But Patrick notices SpongeBob's name tag on the back of his shirt. But whenever SpongeBob asks where it is, scatterbrained Patrick forgets. SpongeBob got fed up with Patrick, who retaliated by saying he had his shirt on backwards, which made SpongeBob realize he was wearing his shirt on backwards and he had his name tag all along, and just in time for inspection. When Mr. Krabs gazed them over, he passed Squidward as long as he'd shave his nose later that night. What does facial hair have to do with a uniform inspection? SpongeBob had his name tag and the stench of discovery, and Mr. Krabs temporarily kicked SpongeBob out of the Krusty Krab. Back in the present, his 11-minute story was finished, and he saw the lady's name tag. The lady said she was borrowing the real Betty's uniform while hers is at the cleaners. SpongeBob looked at the camera, and the episode ends. So that was Missing Identity, and that's an okay episode in my opinion. When I was in 7th grade and watched this a lot, the part I laughed at the most was the rapid-fire sequence of SpongeBob hurting himself 3 times back to back to back, followed by Patrick forgetting his line. Even as a kid, the visual that stuck with me the most was the split screen of the 4 different parts of SpongeBob going through the process.
The most important meal of the day, Gary's way. Blah.
So that was definitely my favorite part as a kid, along with how Patrick laughed hysterically when he flubbed his lines. I also thought some other scenes were funny as well, like SpongeBob getting covered in garbage, the part at Snail Pole World Headquarters, and when SpongeBob yelled this.
Have you forgotten what we're looking for knee-deep in yesterday's top 40 songs?
I also thought that Patrick's freaking out just sounded funnier than SpongeBob's. Maybe it's because SpongeBob hyperventilated 3 times and Patrick once, but still. There's also a lot of fun character moments. I like how Squidward gives SpongeBob the idea of retracing his steps. I like the mini argument between SpongeBob and Patrick in the dumpster. I like how Mr. Krabs passes Squidward for the inspection compared to SpongeBob. The interactions between SpongeBob and the other characters in the diner are neat to see, as well as Patrick considering even his hellos to SpongeBob as special and not to be taken for granted. I also like the attention to detail throughout the runtime. I like how SpongeBob has the tie on the back of his shirt, and his collar is missing throughout the episode until he realizes his shirt was on backwards the whole time. And SpongeBob is still smelly inside the Krusty Krab after being covered in dumpster shit. The running gag with SpongeBob eating the snail pole and hating it is funny too. I also think it's cool that the events of the story are framed as a flashback that SpongeBob tells everybody else at the diner. That's something that hadn't been done before, and they don't really do it a whole lot since. Off the top of my head, the only times I can remember the main story being framed as a flashback that somebody tells other characters are the SpongeBob's Runaway Road Trip miniseries from Season 8, consisting of episodes 305, A SquarePants Family Vacation, to 309, Mr. Krabs Takes a Vacation, where the characters share their vacation slides and tell the story in the past tense. I wish they did this storytelling structure more often. And in terms of positives, I think that's it. This episode is rather slow-paced. There are so many shots of 2 characters talking where it's a long, uninterrupted take. Instead of cutting back and forth between 2 different angles of the characters, it's often a single shot of them talking back and forth. There's not much visual variety in that. While I like SpongeBob hurting himself and the music that plays during it, that also kind of feels like it goes on a bit too long. This whole episode can be a bit boring at times. The most times the camera switches back and forth is the first half of the sequence of SpongeBob and Patrick looking through the dumpster. Lots of the conversations at the Krusty Krab and outside of Patrick's house are long shots with lots of back and forth dialogue. Scenes like that, and the present day taking place in the diner, put into perspective how little story there is here. It's not an excruciatingly boring snooze fest or something, just slower than most of what else comes out this season. There even seem to be fewer jokes in this episode than normal. Now, it is possible why it's so slow is because this was one of the story ideas for the pilot episode. Steven Hillenburg said he wrote the episodes to where they felt right, and that was why the final pilot we got, episode 1, Help Wanted from season 1, is only 8 minutes long, because there was no need to stretch it out farther than it needed to be. This does feel a bit stressed out with SpongeBob hyperventilating 3 times instead of twice at the most, and him falling down the stairs and eating snail po 5 times. But on a lighter note, that's the worst thing I can say about this episode. It may be a bit slower paced with not a lot really happening, but it still has a lot of funny sequences, good character moments, and the fact that it's framed as a flashback are definitely some redeeming factors about it. This is not mean-spirited in the slightest, and none of the characters are insufferable. It's a nice slice of life story, which is definitely good to have every now and then. At least, as long as it doesn't feel like a boring waste of time, and the funny moments in this episode make it far from bad. And besides, SpongeBob calls Squidward a genius, and he's actually right for once. How can anybody hate this episode? Missing Identity is an average episode. It doesn't do anything awful by any means, but it can be a bit forgettable compared to some of the other bangers this season. But I still think it's a fine enough episode, even if not everybody can remember much about it. But hey, at least SpongeBob found his identity. That's a plus. And I can't wait to share the story around the new piece of my identity to all my relatives at the upcoming family reunion. Plankton's Army is the episode where Plankton unites his entire family to attack the Krusty Krab and steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. Like Missing Identity, this episode aired on January 19, 2004, and is actually the first episode of the series to premiere in the year 2004. That's because around the time this episode was coming out, Nickelodeon advertised Plankton's Army way more than Missing Identity. Having Plankton bring his family in made this seem like much more of a big deal than it really was, which in Nickelodeon's eyes gave them an excuse to put more marketing into this than necessary. This was also during that time where SpongeBob episodes came out a lot slower than normal because the crew had finished all the episodes behind the scenes and now were working on the movie to release later this year. And season 4 wasn't picked up yet, so the series went on a hiatus. This is also the episode from the original 3 seasons where SpongeBob has the least amount of screen time. Throughout the whole episode, he only has 4 lines of dialogue. I didn't notice this until I was a teenager, and now I can't unnotice it. This kind of thing has happened before, like episode 28, SB129 from season 1, where SpongeBob only appears at the beginning and end of the episode, and Squidward is the main focus character of this one. This becomes much more common in the later seasons, where SpongeBob has less screen time for other characters to get the spotlight, and this is a prime example of how to do this well. This one focuses on Plankton, where we learn that his full name is
Sheldon J. Plankton,
and how Karen didn't know Plankton's first name for the longest time.
Sheldon.
Yes, that's my first name.
Plankton's family is also introduced in this episode. And they have actually made a few sparse appearances in the show after this, whether in flashback form or present day. Even I remember a lot more about this than the previous, and that's coming from somebody who actually said a line defending the Gibby pilot that resurfaced. So let's watch this episode before anybody says,
Alright, I get it!
too late! So the episode starts up, and at the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krab says it's the 25th anniversary of the first time Plankton has tried to steal the secret formula, and we get a flashback where he asks if he can have the formula.
Can I have the secret formula? No! Okay.
That's what happened the first time Plankton tried stealing the formula? No matter what he's tried, Mr. Krabs always came out on top, but he knows that Plankton can have a new and clever idea at any moment. Then a robot arrives to order some food. Mr. Krabs thought he would order a Krabby Patty, but he actually ordered chili coral bits and paid for it with money. After the robot left, Plankton revealed he was inside the dollar bill all along, but he didn't know what to do next because he never got that far. After 25 years, he never thought he would get that close. He already has! So Mr. Krabs flushed him down the toilet. After he escaped from a manhole, he went back to the chum bucket. Karen tried to cheer him up, but Plankton wanted to be left alone. And Karen explains how Plankton never lets anybody in, and his doing all his plans on his own always results in a failure. Plankton got sad upon realizing this, but Karen said that all he needs is some henchmen, like muscular tough guys. Plankton liked this idea and went to talk to some thugs, trying to talk like them, but they just ended up beating the shit out of him off screen. Even after Karen accidentally crushed him, Plankton explains how everybody in his family always gets stepped on, which gave him the idea of uniting his entire family together to steal the formula. He contacted everybody in his family any way he possibly could and expected them all to be as smart and evil as him. But when they arrived, he realizes how long he's been away from home. Yeah, I haven't seen most of my family in years. Most of them probably aren't the same anymore. Plankton's cousin Clem reintroduced him to everybody in his family until Plankton got tired.
Alright, I get it!
Plankton took them inside and introduced them to his computer wife, Karen. Clem slipped out Plankton's first name, Sheldon, and Karen thought it was a very funny name, to Plankton's annoyance. Plankton tried to explain his goal to the family, but Karen brings down a second screen and types his name, making his family laugh. As a result, Plankton unplugs her and says that the plan is to invade the Krusty Krab. The family wants something in return, and when they all get turned on by root beer, Plankton agrees to spoil them with root beer. That sounds nice. I barely drink any actual beer anymore. At the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs thinks Plankton actually gave up, until he shows up and shows Squidward and Mr. Krabs that he brought in his whole family. They stuffed Squidward and Mr. Krabs in the toilet, but Mr. Krabs refused to give him the combo for the safe that the formula was in. But the Plankton family figured it out for themselves and got the safe open, revealing the formula.
Hot dog!
Yep. Plankton opened the bottle and grabbed the book, declaring his triumph with the help from his family. Mr. Krabs begged Plankton to not look at the formula, trying to warn him about the truth, but Plankton didn't care. He read through the book until reaching the secret ingredient, 4 pounds of ground plankton. He got freaked out by this and ran home, and so did his family when they saw this, except Clem, who can't read. The entire Krusty crew reunited, and Mr. Krabs said this was only a fake formula, and the real formula was hidden so well that even Plankton couldn't figure out where it was. Squidward guessed it was under Mr. Krabs' mattress at home, which was true, and Mr. Krabs ran home, and the episode ends. No wonder Mr. Krabs hates Squidward so much in today's seasons. So that was Plankton's Army, and that is a really good episode. I love how this one focuses more on Plankton because we learned so much about him, such as that he knows the thug language, even though he failed at getting them to join him, and how he has a massive family that he used to be quite close with before he moved away. And he was away for so long that he evolved into the evil genius who can't accomplish his life's goal, compared to how everybody else stayed relatively stagnant after he moved away. Plankton is pretty great too, even disregarding the world building. I love that he wasn't mad at Karen when she accidentally squashed him, and how he listened to Karen and took her advice instead of just taking her idea as his own, as he's done in the past. I also love how he unplugs Karen, not just for no reason, but because how she was interrupting his important speech, which does get irritating when you're trying to communicate something like that. I also love Karen here too. This episode reveals a bit of her sense of humor. I like how she finds Plankton's first name funny when she hears it for the first time. I also like that she wanted to get Plankton to open up to her when he was down, and helped him with his problem instead of scoffing or mocking him. The later seasons show so many more sides to Plankton and Karen, and in my opinion, that character development started with both of them in this episode. The Plankton family is also really funny, and is one of the highlights of the episode for me. I love how the family does love Sheldon, but they don't just blindly follow him or take any of his shit. They actually want something in return for them invading the Krusty Krab, and when Plankton egotistically says he overthrew the restaurant himself, they remind him that they helped him all along. I love when they burst out laughing at Mr. Krabs' grass comment, and how they all get turned on by root beer. Root beer! I love how well they work together, showing they must have really no rips amongst them, unlike most families in real life.
It's me, Clem!
Clem may not do much, but I like how he's kind of the leader of the clan. As he reintroduces Plankton to the family, he suggests root beer as payment, and he's by Plankton's side for most of the mission. And I love when he says that he can't read when the other Plankton becomes scared out of their minds. Plankton's hillbilly family is one of the strongest pieces of world building in the first 3 seasons of the show, in my opinion, and while they do appear a couple times in the later seasons, this one is by far their most famous episode. There's not much to say about SpongeBob or Squidward, but they do have some good lines here, especially Squidward.
Well, what's all the yelling about? It's at home, under your mattress. Fascinating.
I love when Plankton runs home screaming after seeing his picture in the book, and Mr. Krabs too when Squidward guesses the formula's hiding spot. That's one of my 2 favorite Mr. Krabs moments in this episode. The other one being when he thinks Plankton's family is grass. I like the flashback that has Plankton pretending to be a roach, or doesn't pretend to be a roach. The scene with the robot was neat, and so is the montage of Plankton reaching out to his family. Now I do have 2 nitpicks with this episode that amount to nothing. The first one is, I wish we could tell if the place Plankton talked to the thugs at was the Salty Spittoon, or the Tough Tavern, or even the Thug Tug. And the other one is, I think it's a bit strange that we see Karen's second screen here, and never again in the future. Now going back to what I said earlier, of how this episode premiered first because Nickelodeon advertised it like crazy back in the day, it made it seem like a 22-minute episode because of how they described it. Or at least I assume. I was not actively following the show or its marketing at this point in my life, and I rarely watch new episodes as they premiere live, if at all. So if they did mismarket this episode and made it seem like a special, I wonder why, considering that there were 3 other 22-minute specials in this season alone. Granted, this episode is much better than the other specials this season, but still. But I will admit, at least back then they were marketing the new stuff they had, compared to how they promote their crap these days. And seeing this episode first is something you'd only remember if you were there watching it live back in 2004. I wasn't there, and we all know where I'm sharing this info from. Despite the misleading advertising for this episode, this one is a gem, no question. Inspired concept, great world building and character development, hilarious jokes and gags throughout, nothing short of awesome. One of Season 3's highlights for sure. Plankton's Army is a great episode. It's got some great character development on Plankton and Karen, and some good world building with the introduction of the entirety of Plankton's family. SpongeBob may not appear much in this episode, but that's fine with me. I don't want him to be the lead and carry every single episode of the main show on his own. As long as he's in it in some way, that's fine with me. And this is a great example of giving other SpongeBob characters some good screen time and fleshing them out in a meaningful way. And speaking of family, I think it's almost time for that family reunion so I can share my new midnight release story. Wait. The family reunion was last weekend? And it was the same day as my friend's wedding? Huh. I have no idea how I missed that. Well, my family should have known better than to schedule a family reunion on the same day as my friend's wedding.